Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to another edition of MAXCast, the podcast about Muslim leaders and professionals thriving in various domains and speaking on successes and failures. My name is Danyal Sardar, and I will be your host for today's episode. Today's session is very unique and incredibly exciting because this is our first endeavor into the sports industry. Our guest is a unique success story that is sure to inspire our listeners as he continues to carve out his legacy as a Pakistani Canadian trailblazer in professional sports. So, enter Arsalan Jamil. Born in Pakistan, Arsalan immigrated to Canada with a passion for sports and soon found basketball to be his calling. Arsalan played for the Ryerson Rams men's basketball team and graduated with a degree in computer engineering. After a few years of working in IT, Arsalan finally got his breakthrough by landing a position with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, where eventually he was hired to be the Toronto Raptors executive assistant to the president, Masai Ujiri. Over the next 5 years, Arsalan worked closely with Masai, the front office, and the basketball operations department. With his newfound experience and desire to get more involved in the game, he became an assistant coach with the NBA G League team Raptors 905, which is the minor league affiliate of the Toronto Raptors. Now, in his third year as a professional coach, Arsalan works closely with players throughout the season and helps them in their development. Arsalan is also a coach for Giants of Africa, a not-for-profit organization founded by Masai Ujiri, which uses basketball as a tool to educate and enrich the lives of African youth. In his spare time, Arsalan loves to run coaching camps in Canada and multiple countries across Africa. So, with that said, Arsalan, welcome to MAXCast.
How you doing, man? Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's my first time doing it, so I hope it will be fun.
Oh, we're going to have fun talking hoops. I hear you're in Chicago right now. What's the weather like in Chicago, and what are you doing there?
Yeah, I'm in Chicago right now just with the team. We're on the road. We have a couple of games. We just made a stop in Chicago. It's actually pretty cold over here. It's my first time here, and my first kind of like read for the city is very similar, very much like Toronto. It almost feels like I'm in Toronto downtown right now. So
Absolutely, and we wish you all the best with the 905s this season as well, Arsenal. Did you have a favorite basketball player growing up? I kind of want to say Allen Iverson, but I could be wrong.
you got that right on the nose, man. I meant to mention that too. Allen Iverson and the Sixers were actually playing Raptors at the time. That's like kind of where I got into basketball. And I think this is the game where Iverson scored 54 points. And I remember watching that in my basement. And from that point on, like I think that's like Allen Iverson basically was like the reason why I started taking basketball more seriously at the time. I wanted his jersey. I just loved the fact that he was like this little guy just, like killing everybody on the floor. And I'm an undersized basketball player my whole life. I've been overlooked because of that. And I think for me, that was um, the reason why. So yeah, Allen Iverson, I always tell people is my favorite player ever. So that's where it started.
That's awesome. And I think you might have been talking about the game when Vince Carter missed the 3 point at the end. I'm not sure, but that was a tough series to watch.
Yes, that was game 7 when you missed that shot.
That's right. That's right. Cool. So you establish your love for basketball. Fast forward, you go to Ryerson University, and you really want to make the basketball team, but you're undersized for a point guard. So you try, you get cut. You try again, you get cut. And then I think the fourth time you tried out and you made the team. So my question is, what motivated you to keep trying over and over again? And where did that come from that eventually I will make the team?
So I'll be honest, I actually never thought I was gonna make the team. But every time I got cut, for some reason it was very disappointing. Um, but I just spent so much time playing basketball, man. Like every day I'd go to school, between classes, before school, whatever the case is. Anytime I got a chance to go to the gym at Ryerson, I did, and when the tryouts would come around, it's not something I prepared for in the summer. I just spent my days playing basketball, and I think I was getting better because I, was making friends that were way better than me. So I think as a basketball player, I was always growing. But whenever the tryouts would come around, I'd be just in the gym, just playing, and then a couple of guys would come by and say, "Yo, I'm going to the tryouts." They actually were planning to go to the tryouts the whole time, and on the day of, I would be like, "Yeah, I'm going." And that's kind of how I ended up at the tryouts most of the times. But every time I would get cut, it was just very discouraging. I just remember that feeling. And then obviously I just wasn't good enough. That was really the main reason I would keep getting cut. And it's very, very hard to make teams through tryouts. You have to have some luck. Um, but the thing with me was I actually just accepted that, okay, it's not something that's going to happen because coaches bring in their recruits every year. That's just how the system is. I'm like, there's no way. And plus, I wasn't that good. That's the truth. But at the time, I didn't believe that. Obviously, I thought I was good enough in my head somewhere. But it was not like something I was chasing. It's just something I would go to the trials just to see how much better I've gotten. And I think every year I kept getting better. I went from getting cut the first day to getting cut the second day of tryouts, and then the third day of tryouts. And then even the year that I made the team, I thought I got cut because they never announced my name at the end of the day, and they didn't announce anybody's name. So I just assumed because I was so used to getting cut that, I got cut. And then I went about my day. The next few days, I, went back to work. I was working at the time for Celestica, and I still remember I was on the subway. I think I was coming back to Ryerson from work, and I had my basketball stuff with me. And I bumped into one of the assistant coaches, Michael Kennedy, who was like one of my, mentors that I, built a relationship with over time. He bumped into me, and at the time, obviously, we didn't have cell phones and all these things. Like, you can't really get a hold of me. Maybe you know what I'm saying. Like it was kind of like that. But he bumped into me. He's like, "Yo, what are you doing, bro, kid? Like, where have you been? Like, what do you mean, where have I been?" He's like, "We never cut you yet." I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "All right, cool." He's like, "Okay, come to practice the next day." I showed up, and then, I became part of that. I still didn't make the team, but I became part of their practices in the summer. And next thing you know, one day the head coach calls me into his office and goes, "Hey, what size shoes do you wear?" And that's when it hit me. I'm like, "Oh shoot, is he actually picking me for the team?" And then I remember, just from that point on, I made the team, and I was not ready for that. It's not something I, planned for. I was working. It was my graduating year from Ryerson. I went to school for, obviously to finish my education and go work. So it was my graduating year, and I'm like, there was so much going on, but I still didn't say no. I quit my job. I'm like, okay, I want to really experience this now. I think I always wanted to experience the feeling of organized team and organized environment. It's something I always looked at from the outside. Even cricket, like I always wanted to know what it feels like to be part of a team where you have a coach and you have practices and you have games. I had never experienced that. I just played street sports my whole life. You know what I mean? So that was my like first opportunity to like decide that, hey, this is something I can actually experience. And that's how I ended up making the team. But the lucky part with that was there were recruits that were supposed to come that decided to go back to school. At the time, I think you could go back to OAC, and those kids decided to go back to school, which allowed the coach to give me a chance. And because he had seen me come like every single year, the couple years before, he's like, hey, he has improved a little bit. He works hard. That was kind of my thing. I worked hard. And he, gave me a spot on the team, and that's how I ended up making the team, which was, one of the highlights of my sports experience, as a human being. So it was cool. Yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing that backstory. And something you said that I really really admire is when you got asked about your basketball shoe size, and when you saw the jersey with your name on it for the first time. How did that feel? Did it validate all the years of hard work, of persevering to finally get to what you wanted? It must have felt pretty good, right?
Yeah, that felt really, really good, man. Yeah, just to see your number on the jersey and the shoes, and then next thing you know, you have practices and you have a schedule all of a sudden, and um, it's almost like I always say, man, like in my life, like things have always happened that I didn't even expect. Like uh, I'm just lucky, and that was one of the one of the moments where I was like, man, like I was pinching myself. I'm like, whoa, like I get to be on the team. I used to be the guy looking from the outside and like watching games, and I had a couple friends on the team, and just the response you get from all the people that you played with that tried out and didn't make it, and you get to be the guy that makes it, and there's people that are happy for you, and there's people that are like, why? Like, how did he do it? How did he make it? Like, people didn't believe at the same time. So, all those things made me feel really, really good. But I was just happy to be able to, my mindset has always been the same, is to just get better and better at the game. Even now, I forget where I am, sometimes, and I have to like remind myself. But my mindset is the same, is to learn basketball, and I continue to do that as long as I'm around it. So. But yeah, that was really cool to see. My number zero at the time, because I think I don't know why picked number zero, but I think it was probably because I felt that there's a lot of people that think that I shouldn't be there, so I just picked number zero. So it's cool.
Very interesting choice of number. I respect that. Okay, so
Hmm.
let's fast forward. Okay, you've done school, you've had a taste for basketball at the university level anyway. You get your first break by getting a job at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which is the parent company of the Toronto Raptors and the Raptors 905. So talk to me about that experience, and this was really a pivotal moment for you, Arsalan, because you went from an IT focused role to an executive assistant role with Masai Ujiri. Now this is just amazing because it's Masai Ujiri. So tell me how that relationship sparked and how that role came about for you.
Man, that's another crazy, crazy moment of my life right there. Like I did not see that coming. Before Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, like I was working in the IT industry, because those are the jobs I was able to land after I left Ryerson. Um, and like I had a full-time job in IT, in different companies. This is before MLSC, and I remember, taking on another IT gig because the money was good, but it was a contract. So I was gonna go from full-time job to a contract job, right, where you're not guaranteed if the contract's gonna renew. But at the time, I wanted to make more money. That was kind of my mindset, and I said, hey, full-time is secure and all that, but I'm going to take this 6 month gig that I'm getting at Scotiabank at the time, just to make more money. Um, so a lot of people, I think, in my shoes probably wouldn't leave a full time job that is guaranteed for the next 10 years or whatever. It's just more secure. But I did. So that's kind of like the same thing with Ryerson. When I finished my first year playing at Ryerson, I decided to go back to school, and I enrolled myself into another program just because I wanted to play a couple more years, knowing that I'm not gonna play a lot, knowing that I'm probably not gonna go far with like playing on the Ryerson team. But I just wanted to experience that, and a lot of people, including my family at the time, said, "Don't do it. You're making the wrong decision." The same thing with this IT gig. Like I had a full time job, I left it, but because I left it, I went to the contract job, and then the contract job did not renew me because they figured out I wasn't that good at the job. Um, so that allowed me to go back to my couch at home. I remember December 2012. I had nothing going on. I had no jobs, no leads, nothing. And I'm looking for a job now. So now you think about the full time job that you left for that 6 month gig, but now you don't have a job. But because I made that decision, it put me in a space where I have to now figure out how to get a new job. And long story short, I built relationship with different agencies, and this lady named Jeanette Lamb, God bless her. She called me and said, "Hey, MLSC is looking for a 2 week contract in their IT department," and um, I took it. I didn't even think twice about it. I didn't care how much they pay, whatever. I'm like, yes, I want to do it. I'm going for it. Um, I end up there, start working for 2 weeks, and literally I went and changed people's monitors. Like everybody
That's
that's
what I envision an IT guy doing, by the way, changing monitors and helping you with
yeah,
your startup issues.
exactly. Like I went to school for something a lot more high level, but I'm here now changing computer screens and doing all this little work. It was like little projects. That's what they needed help with. It was almost like a cleanup job, for their IT department, because they had a lot going on. And then those 2 weeks turned into another 2 weeks, into another 2 weeks. And next thing you know, somebody in the IT department gets fired, right? And now they look at me and they say, okay, he can do this particular job. And they move somebody up. And somehow, some way, they extended me until the end of season. In MLSC, everything works by seasons, right? So my contract got extended to the end of the season for the Leafs or Raptors, however you want to label it. And my job at the time was basically providing IT support during all events, such as Raptor games, Leafs games, concerts. So I was not like the regular help desk guy. I was only specifically providing support to the teams and any events that took place at the time. And in that time, obviously things changed with the Raptors management. Masai was hired, um, and like I still don't know till this day, what happened. But like in simple terms, all I can say is I, cross paths with him. During my time there when he first got hired, I did not know him. He did not know me. Like we didn't know each other. Um, and like again, in the most simple words, all I can say is I got handpicked for the job to be his executive assistant. And until this day, I don't know what happened in between. All I know is because he had worked with the Raptors before, he came back. He had relationships with, a lot of people in the organization, and one of those people happened to be the VP of IT. Uh, in the department that I was working, Sasha. His name is Sasha, and Sasha knew that I liked basketball, but I don't know what happened, how it all came together. All I know is I got handpicked for the job, and I was asked if this is something I want to do, and I'm like, anybody in my shoes is not going to say no. So I quickly jumped ships, and next thing you know, I was working with Masai. So that's kind of how it happened.
That
So
is unbelievable. I don't even know if luck works like that. It's almost like doors are opening for you that you never even thought about. Is that an understatement?
man, I'm just that's what I'm saying. I'm blessed. Like even coming to Canada, I always say was one of the biggest blessings because I grew up around people trying their hardest to go move to America, move to Canada, move to these kind of places in the world. But for some reason, God chose me and my family to come here. Even that is a small thing, but it's a big deal for a lot of people from where we come from. You know what I mean? So and getting that gig with Masai was another blessing. Obviously, like I believe that what you do when nobody's watching is it adds up. And
Absolutely.
with basketball, I think like you can take everything away from me, I'm probably going to still be the same towards the game of basketball. I think my passion doesn't change, and I think sometimes that is what finds you luck somewhere. Because somebody is watching. Even when you think nobody's watching, somebody is, right? And all it takes is one person to take notice, and things can change drastically. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's how I ended up with him, man. And I'm lucky that I know somebody like him. So
That's extremely motivational, Ursulan. And let's talk about Masai, if it's okay with you, for just 1 second. Here in Toronto, he's like this mythical sports executive in a city that's starved for championships. He was the one who was able to deliver. You think back to the Leafs since '67, they haven't won. You think back to the Blue Jays since '93, they haven't come close to winning the World Series. But then the Raptors, he delivered. What is it about him that makes him such a successful executive, in your opinion?
well, he works very, very hard. I've seen that up close. And he always says, sports is about winning. You have to win. So he has this winning mentality with everything that he does, whether it's on the court, off the court. And he's very, very consistent with it. He leads by example. He's a very obviously everybody knows him as a leader, and he really is, and he's a leader by example. Um, and then outside of that, like one thing I learned from him was, like you gotta treat people well. You gotta, I think that goes a long way, and he is somebody that's a very good example of that. I've seen it up close. Like I always say, he's bigger. He's more than just a NBA executive. He is somebody um, that really, really treats people well. And I think that also, you know, goes along with everything that he has accomplished. And I think sometimes goes unnoticed. But like people always ask me, how is he like? I'm like he's exactly what you see, on TV. He's exactly that. He's this down to earth, you know, um, human being who's really, really, like good to people, but at the same time, he has this drive to like accomplish his goals, whether it's winning a championship or building a program or helping Giants of Africa grow or help the youth in Africa grow. That is like exactly who he is. So um, yeah, so I think that's what makes him, and he's really good at what he does, which is basketball. Whether it's scouting talent or putting a team together, that's what his specialty is. But there's so much more to it outside of that. So um, yeah, I'm not surprised. It's a lot of work that he puts in a lot of work. It's not easy. Not everybody can do that.
Absolutely, and we're extremely grateful to have him as our chief executive as well. So, okay, let's turn the focus back to you. And you're an executive assistant. You've done that for a few years. You've gotten a good taste for professional basketball, but your true calling in life is still being more involved with the sport in a coaching role, perhaps. So, tell me how this led to the assistant coach role that you currently have with the Raptors 905.
So as my my gig with my first gig with the Raps was, my step into the door, kind of. And as I was going and going and going, I started to observe other departments, and I started to like pay attention because like it's a conversation that I had with with myself, even like just to figure out what is it that I want to do, how do I grow within basketball. And the only thing that would come back to me, was my own time that I spent as a basketball player, which was just the idea of improving your skill, improving as a basketball player, just getting better at basketball. And what it narrowed down to for me was player development. That's something that intrigued me a lot in my time that I was working there. And um, that's and then I ended up in Africa my first time with Giants of Africa, and it was my first camp. I was just helping out, and I ended up coaching one of the teams. And I think that's where it kind of hit me. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do this at a high level, maybe a pro level for a long time, but it is something I enjoy. I really enjoy working with kids. I enjoy, as I'm growing older, I enjoy working with young people. Um, and basketball is a great tool to connect with them. So player development was like the area that intrigued me, and I think I expressed my interest to the right people. I let them know, and from there, Jama Mahalalela at the time became the head coach of the Raptors 905, and he is somebody that I kind of built a relationship with. Right, everything goes back to relationships and people, how people think about you. Do they trust you? Do they feel comfortable with you? And obviously, I was in the right place at the right time, and Jama said, "Hey, like I have a role for you. You can come in," and because he knew that I wanted to grow, on the coaching side of things, or learn, or at least like give it a shot. And he basically gave me that opportunity, which is not easy to get, at this level, because there's a million people knocking at the door that are way more competent than somebody like me. So
I
um,
disagree. I think you have an eye for this, and I think you're absolutely there for a reason. But I do appreciate the humility. I think it shows in the kind of person that you are, and it's like it's amazing actually in a short span of time how much you've achieved, and now you're working as an assistant coach. I just want to elaborate on that for just 1 second. When you're working with so many young players at the G League level, I'm sure a lot of them, their goal is to make it to the next level, which is the NBA. What, in your opinion, as a player development specialist, is the biggest transition that G League players need to make to really excel or even make it to the NBA? Is it just one thing, or is it a couple of things they really need to work on?
I think my answer for this comes from like some of the coaches that I've worked with, because they have worked with a lot of high level players for a long time, and I think in summary from that I can easily say a lot of the players that we are around at the G League level, if you go back a few years, the colleges that they played at, the high schools that they played at, they were like the star players. They're some of the best players from where they come from, but now they're in a space where they're all like the same, and now they have to figure out how to make it to the NBA. And if they do make it to the NBA, they're not going to be getting a lot of minutes at the NBA level. They may come in for 5, 7 minutes a game or 10 minutes a game, whatever the case is. They have a role to play. Some of them might not even get to crack any minutes at that level. So getting them to understand that can be something that can be a little bit of a transition for them, because they're not used to that. They're used to having the ball in their hand. They're used to scoring a lot. They're used to having all of that. So to help them understand that, I think the ones that figure that out usually figure out a way. But that window is so small, and these guys are young. They're very young. They have their perceptions of who they are and who they're going to become. Um, but I think the challenge is that getting them to understand that, hey, you're in the G League. Yes, we get you did this, but now you gotta, fine tune your skill level, find a niche, whether it's shooting or whether it's defending or whether it's rebounding, and then do that at the highest level and do it consistently. And maybe that will get you a 10-day contract or
Sure.
something at this level, and then you get your opportunity, and you're not gonna be the man. So a lot of guys come into the G League thinking they have to drop 40 points a game to get noticed, and that's not usually the case. So yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So as a coach then, Arsalan, what do you consider success for yourself? If a player gets that 10-day contract, or if a player improves their shooting from X percentage to another, as an individual, just somebody who likes to self-assess, what do you consider success for yourself?
I think winning for sure, being part of a winning program, I think that's important. Doesn't matter what type of situation you're in. G League is known for developing players, and players that come from the big teams, the affiliates, which is, we all understand that every team is dealing with that. I think there's a lot of player movement. There's players leaving, there's players coming in, you're dealing with new players every year. There's a brand new set of roster. But I think being part of a winning basketball system that works regardless of what kind of players come in, I think to me is one way I look at success, which is winning games, no matter what the situation is, figuring it out. Seeing players do well, obviously making it to the NBA. If not the NBA, maybe they go overseas. Seeing them improve a skill, or seeing them even like notice you and say, hey, Daniel, you were part of my development. Them just even acknowledging that, I think that's something that feels good. But just to see them, like make more money or go play for better teams, it doesn't have to be the NBA. Just seeing them progress as a basketball player for sure, is success to me. I think it feels good to see that, especially when you build relationships with these guys. Like when you spend time with these guys, it's more than just basketball, and you just get to see other side, more things about them that brings you together. To me, that's the special part, and that goes not just with players, with just people generally. Like this is our livelihood. We spend 40 hours, 60 hours a week doing this, and you just build bigger relationships out of that. So building those relationships to me, I think, is also a success. And obviously, like, um, hopefully when we win a championship, that's to me is like, the goal at the end
Ultimate
of the day.
goal. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that should be the goal for anybody, really and truly.
Now you sound just like Masai. Winning trumps everything. I see what he sees in you then. This is an interesting question that I have for you. A lot of players in the G League consider every game to be quote unquote like a tryout. You never know who's going to notice you, when you might get called up, or when opportunity arises. Is there like tryouts for assistant coaches as well? Like, do executives often go to these G League games and say, "Hey, that assistant coach has potential to be at the NBA level, right? Maybe keep an eye on him." Does that happen at all with assistant coaches? I'm just curious.
Yes, for sure, 100%. I think for staff even, the staff in the G League, their goal is to do the same thing they're doing at the next level, right? Everybody here, their first goal, I think, is to go to the NBA, I think. And there's a lot of scouts, there's a lot of people around, there's people watching not when they're not even here. Those guys, they're experts at what they do, and they know how to hunt talent, they know how to, you know what I mean? I think everybody is being watched, and but that's not something I get into. I actually don't care. I don't get caught up in that. I don't really have an agenda,
Sure.
is what I'm trying to say. I'm still at a phase in my life where I'm trying to figure out what my why is. Like, why do I do what I do? I know I enjoy being around the game of basketball, but I'm still trying to figure that out. So I don't get caught up in, hey, I got to impress this person or impress that person. That's not how I'm wired. I never was that way. Um, but I do believe in, like being honest with what you do with your work. Try to do it the right way. So I think if you do that over and over and over again, good things happen.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So if I was to ask you 5 years from now, Arsalan, where do you see yourself? Do you have any idea? Have you given it some thought? Maybe it's, who knows? It could be at the NCAA level. It could be at the NBA. It could be right where you are. Do you kind of have a roadmap in mind for where you want your career headed?
Unfortunately, I don't, and that's something I've always struggled with in my life. Because if you had asked me, hey, Arslan, like if you had asked me 10 years ago where I would be, I wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to be in the NBA. Like it was not even part of my plan. At the time when I was jumping around companies, I was trying to figure out a gig that that I like in that industry. I had no idea. So because of like things going, like me like ending up in this industry that I'm in, that I've been in for the last 9 years, like because of these type of things that keep happening with me, I don't really have a 5 year plan. But I if I'm going to continue in this industry, like in 5 years, I would love, I expect myself to be 10 times better as a coach than where I am right now. To me, that's kind of like what I'm working towards. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
Like I can't be in the same. I don't want to get stagnant.
Yep.
I want to make that improvement, and I think I have for as long as I've been here because I'm constantly learning all the time. Like whenever I'm around the game of basketball, I feel like I get better as a coach. I'm when listening to other coaches or just observing. I'm constantly growing. That I love about my day to day is that I think I'm getting better all the time, and I intentionally want to get better. So I think 5 years from now, for me, I think it's important that I'm not in the same space. I better be a lot better. That's an expectation, and that's not just basketball. It's everything else. Just as a leader, as a human being, as a family person, um, as a business person. I do see myself working for myself one day. Those type of like getting closer to those things that I feel within me, that I have a vision for. I think so. Yeah, to answer your question, no, I don't have a 5 year plan.
But I do agree with a very interesting point you made about evolving, always evolving, and you know this, like the offenses and the defenses are getting so complex now at the highest level. If you're not evolving and finding out ways to be more innovative, you become a dinosaur in a very fast-paced game. So I think you're definitely on the right track with your mindset there. One more thing I picked up when I was doing some research on you. You recently became an assistant coach with the Guelph Nighthawks of the Canadian Elite Basketball League. For our listeners who don't know, the CEBL is the acronym. They're a Canadian professional basketball league, I believe in their second or third year of operations. And Urslan, maybe you can tell us a bit about that experience, and what differences you've noted from like a G League product to like a CEBL product.
Yeah, CBO is actually a great league. It's a great way for players to come in the summer. It's a summer league basically at this point. I'm not sure where the league is going in the future, but it's in the summer. It's a great opportunity for a lot of players to come in, make some money, and obviously like um, gain some game experience. Um, and also for Canadian players specifically, I think it's a great uh, you know um, venue because it is something that um, there's a lot of really good Canadian basketball players that have to go overseas to play and find jobs. Well, now they have something right here at home, and it's growing. I think they have added two more teams, Montreal and Scarborough Shooting Stars. And for me, like it's been a great place to go and apply so many things that I've learned at the 905 level. And I have a senior role with Guelph, so I'm able to do more and actually experience drills that I never have experienced or I've only observed things that I've observed that I get to implement. It's one thing to like be in the room, and it's another thing to actually lead a conversation. You know what I mean? So I get those reps, at Guelph, and obviously the head coach there, Charles Kissy. I met him through my work at 905, and he's one of my friends, he's one of my mentors. And again, it goes back to relationships. People give you an opportunity, people give you a chance, and it comes from your relationships with them. So he gave me a great opportunity to be there. He lets me do a lot of things, and for me, like it's a scary feeling. Like I haven't never stood up in front of players and done a scouting report or things like that. So I get to experiment those things there and kind of like face my fears that I have there. So it's a really, really good opportunity, not just for players, even for staffs to go and experience. And as far as talent goes, there's a lot of actually G League players that played last year. There's a bunch of players that were in the league last year. They played in the G League this year. And we had a couple of them on our team, and I think that the league is growing. They have done a really, really good job of like marketing it and just like overall just running it. I think it's going in a good direction, and it's a great place to grow as a player and as a coach or anything that you're doing, like whether you're a video coordinator or you're the Instagram content person. Like it's slowly growing, and I think I won't be surprised if it becomes like if it becomes more than just a summer league.
There's some very interesting points you mentioned in there, Ursulan, and my understanding is CEBL really is like a showcase of Canadian talent. Like to give them a platform to get their names out there and hopefully get some 10-day contracts with NBA teams, which has happened. Absolutely, it's happened. So, in your experience working with G League, where a lot of the players might be, NCAA athletes or European players, to working with more Canadian-focused talent, do you feel like we're bridging the gap? Because I know Canada is a fast rising basketball program, but in your opinion, do you see like the talent, the young emerging talent that's really closing the gap between the U.S. and Canada, or at least getting closer?
I think it's a slow process, but it's going in that direction. I think there's obviously more players in the NBA. Even if you look at the national team, there's better players. Even like if you look around, like the U Sports level, I think players have grown there. And with all the resources we have nowadays, like a lot of players are able to like get so much knowledge from the internet. Like there's just so much more available. But as far as budgets go, I think that sometimes is the limiting factor when it comes to Canada and the U.S. I think sometimes that's the difference. The facilities and all those resources that they have over there, I think they have been there longer and their programs have been running longer. So it is a slow process, but I think it's going to continue to grow uh, as we go, especially with leagues like CEBL, having that at home. So I think, yeah, it's a slow process, but it's going in a very good direction for
Okay,
sure.
now it's wonderful to hear. And I guess that's one of the ways, you keep, developing as a coach as well. Which, kind of leads me to the question, players, they work on shooting, rebounding, whatever have you. How does a professional coach improve their skill set? How do they develop? What kind of opportunities do they seek to become better? Like you want to be better every single day. So do you talk to other coaches? How do you improve?
Yeah, you gotta talk to other coaches. Obviously, you work with coaches you learn from. So a lot of conversations for sure. A big part of coaching is watching
Hmm.
film. A big part of pro basketball is watching film. The high level players, that's what they do. Like they, it's not just the on court stuff. It's off the court. They're watching a lot of film. That's the best way to study um, the game of basketball. So watching film, like all kinds of film. Whether it's G League, NBA, NCAA, WNBA, Europe, because the ball bounces the same way, but there's so many different things you can learn from the systems um, that are being executed everywhere around the world. So I would say that's a big piece of it. And obviously there's other ways, like going and watching practices of other coaches or going to coaches clinics, um, you know, um, and then outside of that, like for me, player development has been like my main area that I've spent most of my time in. This year, actually, I got to grow more as a video. Like I was along with my previous responsibilities, I've added, I was also the video coordinator for our Raptors 905 team this year. I am that this year, which has also allowed me to see the game from a different perspective because I'm here in film sessions and our coaches are, running film, they're stopping film, they're teaching through film, and I'm the guy that's stopping film for them and then listening to them because I have to listen to what they're saying. I have to be in sync with them. It's like a critical. I'm a critical piece to their presentations, so I have to listen. And with all the listening, I'm getting better, and I'm learning. Okay, this is something I gotta start doing, or this is how I gotta start viewing the game. But as far as player development goes, like you know, the best way to learn is by actually getting in the gym, finding players. I found players locally that I built relationships with local pros, and during all of COVID, I had a gym. And even if things were shut down on the G League side, I was in the gym just working with some of the players. I told them, hey, just come to the gym. I'm not gonna charge you anything. Let's get better. You want to get better at as a basketball player. I want to get better as a coach. So that's the best way is to get real reps, and then you bring that together with the video side of it. That's like kind of like a complete package. For the pro coaches, I think that's what separates
Sure.
pro sports from the other levels of basketball is the detail. So yeah, there's many ways to get better, really and truly. It really comes down to you and how much work you're willing to put in, because it can be a lot sometimes.
So this kind of leads to a very obvious question, Arsalan. The G League, the CEBL, video coordinator, you got so much going on for yourself. How do you make time for personal stuff? Or do you feel like you're sacrificing that part of your life to really follow a dream? Or do you feel like you found a balance? I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Um, my head coach Patrick Mutombo always says, man, this is not for everybody. This level of basketball and the job, the travel, everything that comes along with it, the preparation, the time you've spent away from your families and stuff like that. It's not for everybody. And like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, I'm still trying to figure out my I'm in a phase of my life where I'm still trying to figure out my why and what's very important to me, what's not very important to me. Um, and I'm not going to lie, like being able to balance the personal side of things have been kind of like a struggle for me. And I'm trying to figure that out too. So I don't know, I don't have an answer to your question yet, but it is something that I'm working on and trying to get to the bottom of.
Absolutely. Sometimes they say it's a labor of love. You're doing it because you're passionate about it, and it's very obvious to us that you're extremely passionate about this. We're almost done here, Arsalan. I look back at the conversation we just had, and I am in awe of the highs and the lows you've kind of gone through. And being a minority, like you mentioned, a Pakistani immigrant, there's lots of people out there, Arsalan, like yourselves, that are trying to break it into the professional game, but they can't find that door. They need some pushing. What message would you like to give to those individuals that are struggling right now, and they just need some motivation to keep going? What would you like to say to them?
Um, so they're specifically looking for the pro, or
it,
it
it,
could
it
be
could be
anything.
it could be at the pro level, it could be at the college level, it could just be they're very close to realizing their dream, but they keep getting knocked down. What advice would you have?
Um, the truth is, there's a million people knocking on the door, and there's not many jobs of these type. Um, if this is something they really, really want to do, they have to continue to find ways to do it. If it's not at the level that you want it to be, go and coach young kids, go and coach a high school team, go and help in a different gig. Like, you don't have to be a head coach to start. You might have to start as the equipment guy or whatever the case is. You have to take on a small job. You got to find a way to, like, I know a lot of people are willing to volunteer and ray, like, you really have to, like, I think, like, I've come across many people that say they want to do it, but they don't want to do what it takes to do it. So I think you got to look at yourself and be honest with yourself. Am I really willing to do the little things? There's a lot of people that like, you have to have a clean mindset. Like, it's not about the status. If you really care about the game of basketball, go and do a camp yourself. Go and spend some money, or if you want to do it, go and rent a gym, get the kids in your community and do something. If you really, really care, there's many ways to create awareness about how good you are if you're really good at what you do. And it's not easy to get into the pro level, but if I was them and I really wanted to be in basketball, I probably would have no problem going and helping a high school team, or you know again, like, working with kids in my community. Like, that's something I do anyways. Outside of what I do, I work with kids in my community and try to do clinics and stuff like that, and I actually enjoy doing that. But I know it's not easy. um Try and go attend events. Like, if there's events where there's going to be the personnel that makes decisions about these type of gigs, and they're going to be present there. Hey, go and buy a ticket, go to those parties, go to those um, clinics, whatever it may be. Like, find a way and go spark a conversation. And if it doesn't work, then go again the next year and the next year. It's kind of like trying out. You try out every year, and they're gonna just look at you and say, "Oh, this person shows up every year or every," you know what I'm saying? And eventually, somebody. All you need is one person. Like, I always look at our lives, and as people, we're like all like salespeople. We're all trying to sell ourselves to the world, and everybody's saying no. Everybody's saying no. Everybody's. All you need is one person to subscribe. That's all you need. And I'm pretty sure, if you keep persistent, somebody is going to give you a shot. Like, all these people that are decision makers, they have so many staff changes, so many things happening, and sometimes, you can catch a break and things can change.
Wow, that was you basically laid out the blueprint of how to get noticed, and how to really persevere and break through, and that was amazing, man. That kind of concludes the questions that I had, but I want to thank you, Urslan, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your experiences, and I truly believe, and I truly mean it when I say that you are a trailblazer. At a time when we're trying to get more diversity in the pro game. It doesn't have to be Pakistani. It could be any minority. At a time when that's so uh, severely needed, I feel like you're setting a great path for a lot of these individuals. And I want to thank you for taking the time. You're in Chicago, you're in your hotel room, and this means so much to us. So thank you so much. And we wish you continued success not just in your career, but also the Raptors 905 as they finish up the regular season, Arsalan.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. And for all the minorities out there, honestly, like I know it's not easy, like um the way it is, the way I look at it is eventually there's going to be a brown NBA player that's going to be really, really good, or a minority NBA player. There already has been some, but I'm talking about, I always tell people people that I work with, I tell them there's somebody coming. He or she is coming, and it's going to happen. I see more and more of like other minorities coming into the NBA in different roles. It's going to happen. It's also a process because there's a lot of kids growing up in Canada that I know personally that want to play in the NBA. One of them got to make it. It's going to take some time, but it's going to happen.
Yep,
It's going to
yep.
happen. It's going to happen. We're also growing up in the same systems as the other ex NBA players that have made it to this. It's going to happen. It's going to take some time, but it's going to happen. And it's not easy. A lot of people overlook me because uh, even players, they look at me and say, I'm not used to seeing a coach
Hmm.
who's brown. I'm used to seeing a coach, like there's like a way they identify, but like it's gonna change, and it comes with, if you're good at what you do, then the right people will take notice, and that's what you need to focus on. But it's going to happen. I know there's a lot of basketball players coming up that are from our communities, um, and I'm used to it, man. Like I was an undersized brown Pakistani kid trying to play basketball with all these great players, and they all made fun of me. I've been made fun of. I've been overlooked. I'm so used to being overlooked that I actually am numb to it. Like people even now probably look at me and say, "Who are you?" And the truth is, yeah, they're right. Who am I? Like, what have I done as a basketball? I've never coached for 20 years, like a lot of these guys have. I've never played basketball at the pro level. So my path is completely different, right? They grew up around the game of basketball their whole life. They have credibility, but my credibility comes from my path, and I think the same goes for everybody else. Like I'm a Pakistani kid who couldn't speak English, who couldn't do this, who couldn't do that. Came here, picked up basketball at the age of 16, made the team as a walk on. I know my story, and I'm proud of everything that has happened. But it was not because I'm trying to pursue anything. It was the only thing I pursued was like improve as a human being and improve as a basketball person or player or coach. And that's all I focus on. And I don't care. I don't see color. I don't see this. I don't see that. But I think other people do. And it doesn't bother me, because I'm so used to, like I've been through that, and as a player, it really, really affected me. But at this stage in my life, I've grown older. I care less about what people think, and I think sometimes we get caught up with, oh, I'm brown, I'm never gonna make it. Oh, I'm 5'7", I'm not gonna make it. I think those are things you're telling yourself, and I think we have to get out of that too. And I'm telling you guys again, there's a brown kid that's coming, and that's gonna make a change for a lot of the other brown kids around the world. And it's not just brown kids; it's other minorities, whether you're from China, Philippines, whatever it is where you come from. Like I strongly believe that. And it's gonna happen.
Absolutely, and it's a fast-growing sport. It's a very global sport, and the GTA is extremely diverse. So it's inevitable before we see the
Yeah.
next big superstar. So, Urslan, thank you for sharing your insight. I really enjoyed this conversation, and you know what? We would love to have you back sometime, and in 5 years, when you become even a better coach. And we wish you all the best. And this was fantastic, my friend.
Thank you, Daniel. Nice meeting you, man, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely, no
Appreciate it.
problems at all. So this concludes another edition of MaxCast, the podcast where we talk about Muslims leaving a positive footprint in the community and elevating the brand. Until next time, my name is Danyal Sardar. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.